Hey everybody, Professor Snark checking in here again as we get towards the end of the semester and into our final workshop unit for the class here. It follows directly on the poetry workshop, so there's really not a lot for me to say right now. In fact, you may have noticed that as we've moved through the course, it becomes a little bit less you interacting with material in the course and much more you interacting with material that other people have generated for the course. In other words, these workshops really begin to take prominence. And so you're not, doing exercises or activities or that kind of thing so much as just producing creative work, whether it's poetry like we've just done or now the open genre workshop. So you're choosing what kind of piece you'd like to write. So there's really not a lot for me to say in terms of the unit that we're now in. It's a workshop. We've done a number of these before, so you know the drill as far as the importance of posting on time, posting in a file that people can access, because obviously the thing that you're getting from the course now is largely feedback from your various group members. And so there was some really great poetry written for the poetry workshop, and I think even more important than that, there was some really good feedback. And you will notice, as I mentioned before, that the groups for that poetry workshop were a little bit bigger than normal because, the volume of each individual's work is just smaller. I mean, it's shorter stuff to have to read. So what you've got now is hopefully a series of pieces of feedback on your poem that, taken as a whole, will hopefully be really useful as far as alerting you to things that were successful, which is really important to hear about, but obviously alerting you to things that were weaknesses or maybe areas for improvement. And so this is a good point to note, if we haven't already, that the nature of our course, the Introduction to Creative Writing kind of course, it really doesn't provide for the opportunity for us to now have feedback from a workshop and revisit that particular piece as part of the course. We're always moving forward to something else so we can cover as much territory as possible. So you can be introduced to as many things as possible if you want to think of it that way. But obviously one of the things you want to be conscious of now is how you want to individually work with the feedback you've gotten from the various workshops we've done. There's no mechanism in the course that requires you to make revisions or to keep copies of these or to begin building a file of poems or stories or whatever that you've written. But hopefully everyone is starting to do that if you don't already, as a way of, keeping the stuff organized. Hopefully, in addition to the things that you learn in this class, part of what it's motivating you to do is just write on a regular basis. And so obviously part of what you want to do as doing that is keep it all organized, because you may find that at some point you have 20 poems, a few short stories, half of something else that you started, and it just sort of scattered across different computers, different folders, splashed on the desktop until you've got too much stuff there. So really think about organizing some of what you've written for this class, but also, as part of your own work as a writer as well. Okay, so we get into the final workshop here, the open genre. So the groups are smaller again, though, people might choose to do poems, in which case you're only creating maybe a page or two of written text. But again, like I said, there's really not much more to say as far as the technical aspects of getting this done. Be really conscious of providing that good, substantial feedback to people. And I guess the other thing that you can think about, particularly because of the volume of feedback you may have received for the poetry unit, which is more than just the 1 or 2 or 3 files with comments like for previous workshops, is that one of the aspects of being a writer is managing feedback. And so again, you're looking for where people identify, or multiple people maybe identify, a strength or weakness. If one of your readers identifies a weakness, you can certainly look at that and think about it for yourself. But if nobody else has mentioned that as a serious, kind of flaw in your work, then you can edit your editors. You can choose to say, well, that's one reader's opinion, and they might be right. They're entitled to that opinion. But it doesn't mean that you need to necessarily act on every piece of feedback that you get. You're really looking for trends that other readers identify, and you have to be honest, of course. You can't just defend your work as perfect every single time. But you don't, by the same token, you don't have to make every single change. And what you might notice, especially with the volume of feedback you get this time, is that one reader liked something that another reader didn't like. And so again, that's the nature of writing. People will develop their own opinions. And in fact, you can have a reader read your work one day and absolutely love the title and hate the ending. And that same reader could read your work, a month down the road, and the exact opposite. For whatever reason, the title just doesn't really work for them, or the ending all of a sudden really catches their eye, whatever. So even readers themselves, they're not machines, right? And you're a reader too, so you know that you have your own opinions that are based on your own tastes, but also kind of particular to the mood that you're in and the day you're having and the weather outside and all of that kind of stuff too. So be really conscious of two things: managing literally the files that you're producing now, so you can keep your writing organized, but also, of course, managing the feedback that you're getting and having a good sense of when to act on something and when something is not wrong, but just the opinion of a reader with whom you don't necessarily disagree on that point. Not a big deal, right? And it certainly happens, so it's not something you can avoid. Okay, so we move into our final workshop. Really be conscious now, particularly as we get to the end of the course, on crafting work, whatever genre that you choose here, but crafting something that really does reflect kind of what you've learned in the course so far. So one of the things you may want to do before proceeding with the writing aspect here is, revisit some of the units, or just take a moment to reflect on, what are some of the main things that I've learned in this course? Is it about plot development, character? What sort of responses have you got from readers across all of the workshops? Have they identified strengths or weaknesses that are really obvious trends now in your work? You're really great with intros or conclusions, or the themes that you write about or the subjects that you write about seem to be really intriguing to people. Sort of be aware of those as either strengths or weaknesses that people have identified. And of course, I always suggest going back to the rules for creative writing here, especially if you haven't looked at these in a while, because they come quite early in the course. This is a good time to revisit this PowerPoint here and just see if you still are keeping these things in mind as you're sitting down to write. And really, they're cross-genre rules. They apply in almost all kinds of writing that you might be doing. So make sure that you're not mechanical about them, obviously, but keeping them in mind as you're writing your piece for our last workshop here. All right, so as usual, you can look at the units and see what we have left to do. Check the due dates, of course, so you know how things break down as we finish up the term. If you have questions for me, or you'd like some additional feedback on your work, by all means be in touch. And as usual, I look forward to reading what everyone has written for our open workshop, or open genre workshop. All right, talk to everybody soon.